What is going on, everyone? Welcome into the Brant Partial Show. So let's get into it. I kind of wanted to touch on the Florida State thing real quick. Florida State now getting into the playoffs is tough. Florida State was deserving. They had a good season. Jordan Travis is a tremendous quarterback. It sucks he got hurt, but to be honest, though, the college athletes are kind of a little. College athletes are a little bit babied. You have a bad year, you can just hop in the transfer portal. Look at all the people that have sympathy and outcry for them. Sometimes in life you just kind of get screwed. You can be on a public bus tomorrow, and someone can throw up on you on your way to work. I guess that's not as an extreme case of getting screwed, but people get screwed all the time, and there's not. Obviously, I think it's good that people are fighting for Florida State, making their voice heard. That Florida State deserve to. Be in the playoff, but all these people, too much of that praise and fighting for them is kind of just going to make them, a little bit. It can be a little dangerous. It'll satisfy them too much. You really want that hunger of. The best case was for for people to not have this much outcry, and for Florida State to really be hungry to really prove people wrong next season. Well, I guess they have an opportunity against Georgia in the bowl game, but really an opportunity next season and moving forward to really stake their claim that they're going to be here for a long time. They're going to be a really good team, and they have a chance to use this as fuel in the upcoming years. But yeah, Florida State, tough call, but you had to have Alabama in. Alabama won the SEC championship. They beat a team that had literally not lost in 2 seasons in Georgia. You had to keep Alabama in. I actually was for leaving Texas out. I know I'm kind of in the minority there. A lot of people just said, a lot of people were just for Texas because they earned it and because Texas won, or because Texas beat Alabama and Texas, won the Big 12, looked really good. But I was for leaving them out. I don't think, head-to-head means something, but, kind of the case, like with the Florida State argument, going undefeated means something, but I don't think head-to-head's everything, because you got to think, I know that, I guess I'm kind of going against the argument games have to matter, but you also kind of have to keep in mind that game was 2 months ago. Now, there is the argument. I remember my buddy and I were talking. There is the argument, yeah, well, that game still mattered. September is meaningful. I get that 100%, but you kind of have to think things change from when that game happened. Alabama became a better team. Alabama team now is not the Alabama team week 2. Now, do you not that sounds like I'm taking away from Texas's win, but things have changed. It was not the same Alabama team in week 2 that Texas beat, and Texas did lose to Oklahoma too. So obviously, if Texas played Alabama now, could they still win? Yes, but that was a different Alabama team, and Texas did lose to an Oklahoma team that, Oklahoma's still a good team, solid program, well coached, but they did lose to Oklahoma, and Florida State was undefeated. So you could make a strong case Florida State could have went over Texas. So, but, head-to-head, the kind of the whole scenario and the whole situation made it so Texas and Alabama both had to go, and then Texas being the 3 seed, Bama being the 4 seed. Trying to adjust my camera. Camera looks kind of crooked right now, but it'll be all right. Okay, so let's talk Texas-Washington. And I'll say it upright. I think Washington is the better football team. I think Texas is a good team, but I think that, to me, this game kind of strikes me as, I could be wrong here. Texas is kind of a danger. I'm not going to. Maybe I'll bet on this game, maybe I won't. Texas is kind of that team where they kind of scare me. Meaning, well, I don't say scare me. They kind of are. I think Washington will win, but Texas is kind of like, Texas is one of those teams where if they go out and won, and if they go out and beat Washington and played well, then I'd kind of be like, oh man, I should have known all along. They are that kind of team where, I guess another way to put it is they're that team where you doubt them, but then they win and you're like, oh, what? No, I should have seen that coming. Texas to me kind of has that type of feel, but also, Washington was that team against Oregon a little bit for most people, in most people's eyes anyways, double-digit underdogs. And I'm thinking like, I try to see both sides of the argument though. Let's go back to Washington, Oregon though. I think this is important to talk about when you're looking at the Washington Texas game, Washington Texas matchup. So Oregon double-digit favorites, and Washington had beat them earlier in the season. So what I'm thinking is, the argument was Oregon's playing hot right now. Bo Nix is a really good player, but Washington, seemed to be in control, and there was never really a doubt they're going to win that game. So same kind of thing. I think a lot of people are. I guess this game kind of has that similar feel where a lot of people are like, man, Texas with Quinn Ewers, man, that offense. But you look at Texas' defense, it's okay. Sarkisian, he's a good, teetering on, verge of a great coach. Maybe could break into elite, but still, simply a good coach. So, and Kalen DeBoer, people are talking about as maybe an elite coach. So, you talk about, Washington, doubted once again, 4-point underdogs, a lot of talk on Texas getting in the playoff, winning the Big 12 for the first time in a long time, a high potent offense. A lot of the praise to Texas, but, people not as much doubting Washington in this case, but still, there's still that sliver of doubt in Washington. But Washington, an excellent football team, good defense, physical at the line of scrimmage. I think that's what's not really talked about as much with Washington. This is a team that they're really strong on the offensive line. They have some talent on the offensive line, and Kalen DeBoer is an elite coach, and this is a guy that's won everywhere he's been. Tremendous record at Sioux Falls. So Washington has an opportunity to really do something special, and they have an opportunity to get a big win over Texas. So I'm gonna pick Washington to win. I think Penix. I think the Washington offense, is just gonna be too much for Texas's defense. I think this is one of those games where Washington, maybe a little bit similar to Oregon, Washington is just so, even though Texas is good, Washington is just so strong and dominant offensively at the line of scrimmage. I think they control the line of scrimmage enough where even if Texas puts up points, it really never really puts in doubt who's going to win the game. So I think Washington does win this game, but I think Texas will put up some points. But I think Washington will make a statement at the line of scrimmage once again, like against Oregon. I think Penix has a good game. I think Odunze and the wide receivers make some big catches and are a problem for the Texas secondary. So I think Washington wins this game, but don't be surprised if Texas puts up points and we do have a fairly close game. So Michigan, number 1 Michigan versus number 4 Alabama in the Rose Bowl. So I think there's two ways I could look at this game. I think I could look at it from the optimistic Michigan fan perspective, and I could say, oh, Michigan, so good defensively. Jim Harbaugh is back. Michigan was overlooking TCU. They're going to come out stronger, more prepared this year. I think I could look at it from an optimistic way. But I think I could also look at it from the point of view of, Michigan, people kind of, I think people having a short-term memory is a good thing, but I think it also can kind of really blur their judgment. If you rewind 2 years ago, Michigan was really outclassed by Georgia, an SEC opponent. Now, is Alabama as good as that Georgia team? But this Alabama team is not, I don't think they're far from it. You look at, for whatever reason, Michigan, when they play an SEC opponent, they are really overmatched at the line of scrimmage. And Michigan, now people say, Michigan has a good offensive line, not just a good, really good offensive line, borderline elite, but to me, their offensive line is more of almost a regional offensive line. Michigan has an offensive line that's good by Big Ten standards, but when they go against SEC level size, guys like Dallas Turner and some of the size Alabama's recruiting, they kind of, not that Michigan's offensive line was bad against Georgia, it more just becomes neutral at the line of scrimmage. I think that's what's kind of the problem with Michigan's not really built to, handle some of the SEC level size. I think, and that's the issue I've seen with Michigan football, especially under Jim Harbaugh. I think that's why they lost to better teams when they've run into Alabama and Ohio State a few years ago under Urban Meyer. Michigan has, pretty good players, in the secondary at the skill positions. But if you can even the line of scrimmage against Michigan, then it comes down to, okay, who's got the better skill position players. Now, Michigan does have Blake Corum, Edwards, J.J. McCarthy, but the way Milroe's playing, and Alabama's got some dudes at the skill position. They got dudes in the secondary too. So if it's neutral at the line of scrimmage, then it's kind of that's where the game goes into a toss-up. So I think that's what the problem is. I think this game at the very least is about even at the line of scrimmage. Then you get into the discussion of Michigan's favored by 1 point, 1.5. I think that's where that thought process goes into. If the line of scrimmage is about an even game, this will probably be an even game. If there's an edge to Alabama at the line of scrimmage, it's pretty much over. Because I can just picture, Jalen Milroe against Georgia in some games where when he's had time to throw, it's just a nightmare for the opposing defense. He can run and scramble and make plays. So, to me, if Alabama, this is going to be like Michigan, Georgia 2021. If Alabama is controlling the line of scrimmage early, you got to believe it's over. Because, I think the way Alabama's playing, if you give them that, if their confidence goes sky high early, you got to feel they're just going to ride that momentum all the way. I mean, you got to think they just beat Georgia. Not that they were intimidated by Georgia, but if they can beat Georgia, they beat Georgia fairly handily in that game. That game really was not as close as the score. I mean, I know Georgia made it respectable at the end, but Alabama kind of controlled that game towards the end. If Alabama not even necessarily jumps off to a lead, but if they can score pretty easily and they can just really have even that slight edge of the line of scrimmage, that just their confidence will just go through the roof. And I just don't that's going to put a lot of pressure on Michigan. But I guess the argument is even at the line of the line of scrimmage is even in this game. I think McCarthy can make enough. I think and say Michigan's defense giving up some points. I think McCarthy, the way he can make plays even when the team's down, I think that'll go a long way. But Michigan wants to be at least, obviously they want the edge at the line of scrimmage, but even if it's about a stalemate at the line of scrimmage, you're kind of flipping a coin in this game. Because, Milroe versus McCarthy, Michigan wide receivers, Bama wide receivers, Michigan secondary, Bama secondary, it comes down to who's stronger in those two, in the offensive skill positions in the secondary, who's stronger in those two areas. And with that, you'd almost have to give the edge to Alabama just because, Jalen Milroe, since he got benched, has just been on a tear. So giving him confidence early, like I've reiterated, could be really demoralizing for Michigan. But it's kind of too bad. It's too bad that Georgia didn't get in. I think Georgia is a top 4 team. I think if you really want to be, like if you want to hook up, if you hook people up to Robert De Niro lie detector tests and meet the parents, I think if you're being brutally honest, Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, Washington probably are the 4 very best teams. Maybe Ohio State. But I think Alabama and Georgia, this goes into a debate that you could have for a lifetime. You could have for hours. Alabama, forget Michigan, Washington, Texas. If you're being brutally honest, Alabama and Georgia are 2 top 4 teams. Okay, let's not kid ourselves. But it comes down to, that's the thing with, I think that's why the outrage for Florida State was so high, is because really what the playoff committee's been is it's the 4 best teams for the most part with somewhat of a deserving factor. like it's more so can you be a really good team with an undefeated record or one loss is what it really is. It's not necessarily like look at like Alabama last year. Like let's be honest, last year Alabama was probably a top 4 team. Like you're going to tell me that TCU was a better team than Alabama, and that's because that's where the best teams with a slight deserving factor is because Alabama was not a deserving team with 2 losses, but would Alabama have beat TCU? Yes. Would Alabama probably have been a better matchup for Georgia? Not even probably. Would Alabama have been a better matchup against Georgia in the national championship than TCU? Yes. Yes and yes. Yes to both. So that is the problem. The committee really is. It's not even. I think people would argue this year that they did get the 4 best teams, but I still think it's the 4 best teams with a slight deserving factor. Because, Greg McElroy was right. Was Michigan State a top 4 team in 2015? Probably not. Was Florida State a top 4 team in 2014? Probably not. There's a number of years you could look at, teams. Was Washington in 2016 a top 4 team? Maybe not. That's just, I guess that's the argument for expansion, for not expanding. Well, I guess I have a separate argument for why they shouldn't expand the playoffs is because, Georgia, Alabama, even Michigan, some of the top schools just aren't going anywhere. Like Alabama and Georgia aren't going, like college football. That's kind of why I've liked college football. College football is probably, I think that's kind of why people don't get frustrated with college, because college football is kind of indicative of the world a little bit and kind of the manosphere. The competitive world of men. College football kind of is a sport of haves and have-nots. If you look at the NFL, a lot of NFL teams are in purgatory, meaning they're like a little above average, but they're not bad enough to get a high draft pick, but they're also not good enough to be a championship team. College football, you actually see, college football is more like real, men. There's men who are succeeding, men are really who are leveling up, and there's men who are just, PlayStation, video games, just not even just not progressing, but getting worse. So that's the thing of college football, really indicative of kind of just how, college football really relates to the statement of haves and have-nots. So expanding. Is expanding going to really help, other teams in recruiting? I mean, maybe a little bit, but enough to really affect, some of the teams that are in the, some of the top teams every year, Bama, Georgia. If Georgia gets in the playoffs this year, they have a legit shot of winning 3 national titles in a row. And that's the thing. I think it goes back to who would teams be the most afraid of? If there's a 12-team playoff, who the heck wants to see Georgia in the first round? No one wants to play Georgia first round. No one wants to play Bama first round. Look at, Bama is the 4 seed this year, but Michigan, you see the way Michigan reacted. Michigan is, they wanted Florida State. They did not want any part of Bama. And that goes back to why, I have to kind of put to side my optimism being a Michigan fan when they go against Alabama, because you look at the reaction of that Michigan team and you're like, that's not being a fan of that team. How confident can I be when they have a reaction to who they're playing? You don't want that type of reaction. You don't want too of an excited reaction. I kind of wanted them to more of just a, straight face clap. That's when, because they always say it's always the fighter that's jumping around, hollering, making noise. That guy, that's not a guy you should be afraid of. It's the guy who's, silent, just, focused. That's, if Michigan, reacting in that manner, that just, fear. Now you can't go into a game with fear, and a lot of times the opponent has beat you. That's the thing. If they go into the game with any sliver of doubt, fear, Alabama's already won the game. So hopefully they can refocus, they can get that out of their mind, and they can really lock in and take Alabama hopefully down to the wire. And if it is a close game, hopefully find a way to win, and then obviously best case to beat them handily. But I think that's the I've been this might be a take that will age poorly, but to me, I have a hard time. I think Alabama is going to win because it's one of those games I have a hard time picturing Michigan winning handily. I think that's a lot of times how I can pick a game is if the team I think's not going to win, if I have a hard time picturing them winning handily, then you've got to go with the team that I can think's, or that I got to go with the other team. So in this case, I have a hard time picturing Michigan winning handily. So in that case, I feel like, Bama's got to be the pick. But yeah, the Heisman, talk the Heisman for a minute. So yeah, I feel like Jaden Daniels should win the Heisman. I mean, Daniels, excellent season, did a lot of great things, put up good stats, did it in the SEC West, did it against good opponents, did it against bad opponents. So yeah, Jaden Daniels, to me, not Jaden Daniels. I think probably Bo Nix. Bo Nix had a really good season too. Really just made a lot of big plays. Bo Nix was really. I know his team had 2 losses, both come into Washington, but yeah, Bo Nix was just so valuable, and the way he played down the stretch and the way he played when Oregon was winning, in all the wins, or just about every win, the way he was playing was just outstanding. So yeah, my Heisman pick would probably be Bo Nix. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this college football playoff. We should have some good games. Texas, Washington, I think will be a good game. I hope so. I hope anyways. The best case is, best case is like last year. Odds are we might get one blowout, but we hope for kind of similar to last year where both are really good games. Obviously, as a Michigan fan, I wanted a different result against TCU, but that game was a wild game, back and forth, shootout. Both teams had a chance to win, but TCU coming out victorious, and then Georgia beating Ohio State by a point, a game where a lot of people thought, myself included, a lot of people thought Georgia was going to win handily. But that line was interesting. Not a big line. A lot of people believed in Ohio State, and Ohio State made it interesting. So, yeah. But yeah, Georgia, Florida State will be cool. It'll be a chance for Florida State to really show people how good of a team they are. I think, it's a interesting matchup. Florida State should win. But Georgia, Georgia's still a really good team. Florida State's offense, same question. Florida State's offense versus the Georgia defense will be really telling. So, that will certainly be a game to watch. But Texas, Texas, Washington. I think that game's really intriguing because It's because a matchup. I think it's a matchup a lot of people were not expecting. I think Washington is a surprise team. Texas, people have been saying Texas is going to be. People a lot of times pick Texas to win the Big 12. People not necessarily pick them to win the national title, but people do say, a lot of times before the season starts, people are like, Texas is going to be back this year. Texas is going to be really good. And this finally is, almost feels like you're dreaming a little bit, especially like if you're a Longhorns fan. This it's kind of crazy to say this is the season Texas is back. So yeah, it'll be interesting with Texas to see how they perform and see if they can get that playoff win and continue to build off a really good season. Their first Big 12 championship since 2009. I still can remember that championship game. That was a game Nebraska had Ndamukong Suh. He was making life hard on Colt McCoy. So yeah, Texas had a really good team. Earl Thomas, Colt McCoy, Jordan Shipley, forget who else. Sergio Kindle on defense, Curtis Brown at corner, Blake Gideon the safety. Texas, even back then had some talented guys, and yeah, they came up short to Bama in the national championship. There is that. There's always that debate. Would Texas have won if Colt McCoy didn't get hurt? It was interesting. Last year, Quinn Ewers gets hurt against Alabama, and Alabama wins. It seems like a lot of people talk about Alabama got 2 breaks against Texas, and this year maybe they were out of the luck ran out. Quinn Ewers fully healthy, and he had a huge game to help beat Alabama. So, yeah. But, I'm going to wrap with that. Thanks, guys, for tuning in to this episode of the Brand Partial Show. Stay tuned for more episodes and clips from the show. Till next time, peace.